everybody. Jennifer's open book. We don't believe in filters. Today we're going to be talking about custody and uh, I lost my train of thought. We're going to be talking about custody and child support issues and the fairness of it. Before I get to that, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, hit your subscribe button, hit the like button, leave comments. I expect a lot of comments on this subject. So leave comments. Let me know what you think of the video. Share. Go check out some of my other videos too. So you guys are going to see me speak to a couple of different people. Up first is my partner, my homie, my boy I always have with me, Anthony from Third Eye Vision. Hey, Anthony.
I smiled when you gave me that introduction. That was beautiful. How you doing?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm all right.
So, this is a topic that is never going to go away. People have different opinions, and most of the time men and women have completely different opinions on this subject, and I see it a lot, and it's something that I find interesting. It's something that I always want to talk to people about. My opinion on this subject is an inexperienced opinion, and as we go, I'm gonna just tell you what I think about different things. But my opinion is very inexperienced because while I do have a child, I adopted her on my own, so I don't have to deal with custody issues or child support issues. My opinion is based on what I see other people going through. And a lot of times I see more of what the men are going through than the women, but I do understand what the women go through as well. And in my opinion, a lot of times when people are talking about this, their focus is on money, 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 but it's not on the child. Like some kind of way they get away from the child. They might mention, oh, your child needs to be taken care of, but it goes from being about that child to being about them. And in my opinion, that's an issue because your main focus should be on your child that you made together. So, Anthony, you have a son. Tell me a little bit about the agreement or the situation with you and your son and his mother. If you can.
It's more of a, in a nutshell, it's more of a shared agreement. Basically, this is more of a shared agreement. But I just want to echo what you said about a little earlier, in that I have also, I'm speaking from my experience as well as other people. I have also experienced a great deal of custody situations where the female is a bit aggressive in the things in which she has asked or she is asking for from the male, or whenever she goes to put the male on child support, it's a great deal of things that she asks for, and mainly the child sort of suffers in the context. But mine, it's agreed upon situation, but I can concur and speak in on both halves.
So can you tell me a little bit about your agreement? Did you guys have to, tell me a little bit about what you guys' agreement is, and I'm curious as to if you guys were able to come to that agreement just between the two of you, or did you have to get courts involved and
No,
okay.
no courts.
Got
It was,
So can you tell me what agreement do you all have as far as your son goes?
it's more of a sharing agreement. It's more of a situation where parental guidance or parental sharing is split. I can't say equally, but enough to where he enjoys his mother's company as well as mine. But it's more so something that we made upon ourselves, and we sort of wanted to keep the courts out of it, and that's how that is.
So you guys don't have to you guys aren't dealing with like child support or anything like that. You guys just do what you're supposed to do as far as your son is concerned.
That's the bottom line, exactly. And I wish that this could be a blueprint for other individuals who may be going through the same situation, but unfortunately, it's not, Jennifer.
Do you think, because I kind of think so, do you think that a lot of the struggle um, within the system, like a lot of struggle with child support and custody, has to do with the fact that the relationship didn't work out, so one person might be bitter towards the other, and this might be maybe a form of punishment or something like that? Or um, another thing is maybe, once the relationship is over with, one parent feels like they shouldn't have to do as much as they did for the child or anything else.
I definitely want to concur with you wholeheartedly with the first part of what you have stated. Um, I really find that a lot of, and unfortunately, it's females uh, tend to have that particular attitude in terms of what you stated earlier. But I wish that it wasn't like that, but unfortunately, it is in terms of situation where I'm gonna punish him because he's with somebody else. So this, that, and the third. But I I don't think that on the second part, I don't think that it should be a situation if we moved on. I don't think that the first party should not be so much not involved in a person's life. I think this it should still be a considerable amount of involvement, but not
Um,
just
it takes it takes two people to make a child, and just
exactly.
because the relationship doesn't work out doesn't mean that your responsibility is over with. You still have to take care of that child.
That's true. I just don't like the fact that many, and I don't know if it's young people, but just from my experience and listening on TV, that a lot of females tend to sort of punish the guy for moving on or for not wanting to be with the person, things of that nature.
Not just young people. I used to think that, and since I'm older now, I'm starting to be around more older people, like people older than me, and they do the same thing, and we have conversations, and that was their way of thinking. So it's not just young people.
Okay. Okay.
So what? Go ahead.
Now that's I just want to say I agree.
Um, I have a thought. 40-year-old kicks in.
Oh, I've been there, done that.
Okay, so I just want to give you like some things that um I've seen, and I want people to understand, because sometimes people think that the child support thing only goes one way, and it actually goes both ways. I know two women who were on child support, and one of the women actually ended up uh, getting locked up for not paying her child support. So that does not just happen to you men. I don't want you guys to think that that's just you. If a man gets custody of his son or his daughter, I'm sorry, of his child, he is entitled to child support.
Hmm.
Um, Another person that I knew, her husband was taking her to court for child support, and she said he act like a little girl. That's, she actually used another word, but she was saying that, that's not what a man do, that's a B move and all that kind of stuff. However, she was getting child support for her other kids. You know what I mean? So what's
Hmm.
good, this is good for the gander, in my opinion. And that's why, like I said, my opinion is an inexperienced opinion, and it's not a popular opinion, especially amongst women. I get in a lot of trouble talking about this particular subject with women, and at the end of it, they always say, well, you don't understand because you're not going through it. And that may be true, and like I said, I'm an outsider looking in. I just don't think that it has to be as hard as it is if everybody can be adults and come to an agreement. My parents, I will tell you this, my parents, my father actually put himself on child support,
Mm.
and this was back in the day. He gave my mom $150 a month. $150 a month is no money, and he had two kids, me and my brother.
Mm.
$150 again is no money. However, my father still bought school clothes, Christmas and birthday presents,
Hmm.
spent the summer with him or any holidays we spent with him, we really didn't need anything because he had everything that we needed there. So him and my mom were able to be adults and make that adult decision. I don't think
It's
that it's fair to expect $400 a month from a person. This is just a example. I don't think it's fair to expect for someone to pay $400 a month for child support and they only make $500 a month. You can't live off of that. So
that's
if you have custody of the parent, you also have a responsibility towards that child. It's not just that person who doesn't have custody of that child. If you have custody of that child, you actually have most of the responsibility.
that's true.
That's not a popular opinion either.
Well, I agree wholeheartedly, and I want to touch on a situation that you had spoken about in reference to the fact that females don't seem to think that guys should deserve any type of compensation or to be put, to be, receiving some type of benefit. I strongly do not agree. I think it does work both ways. However, I do also think about the situations in which, like a lot of times when females or guys who make a lot of money and whatnot, these females tend to ask for a great deal of money. And I mean, I don't know, I haven't done any research to see how much it does take to take care of children, but they tend to ask for an insurmountable amount of money, and that majority of their money does not go on the kids. And I don't agree with that.
So, from my understanding, it's not the person who's suing for child support who asks for a certain amount of money. And like I said, I'm going to talk to some other people later to find out for sure about this. But I think that the amount that's asked for is set up through the court. It's not necessarily that person asking for that amount of money, if I'm not mistaken. And this is something that I want to understand, because I know that a lot of guys are mad at these women because of how much money. And I'm sorry, you guys are going to hear my daughter in the background sometimes. But a lot of guys are angry with the women because of how much money is getting taken out of their checks for child.
Mm-hmm.
And it might not necessarily be that woman's fault. And like I said, I don't know, and I'm going to about that. But just I just really think that if you both can be adults, it's something that you can
work together on,
because you both work together to make this child. And also, I always say this when we're talking about relationships and everything, it's always best to know the person that you're laying down with. Some things change. I've seen women kind of, their hormones get out of control and they turn into a whole nother person.
True.
And sometimes they don't go back to being that person that they were before they were pregnant. So I understand that. And sometimes men just, like, I don't know what makes them kind of duck out and be like, well, you know what? I'm going to tell you this. My brother told me that men don't have that same bond with their child that have, and that's why it's so much easier for men to leave. Some of them, the ones who just leave, they don't bond with their child because they didn't get to carry that child and bond with their child all that time. And so it's not really, they're not really close with this human. It takes men a little bit longer to grow with their child.
That sort of makes sense. That really does. I kind of see where he's going with that. So go ahead.
Yeah, so and this is how I see it too. And I know, like I said, I know it's difficult to raise a child alone. Children are expensive. I'm taking care of my child by myself. They're expensive, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't make a person do what they don't want to do.
I agree.
But what you can do is give them an ultimatum. So either you want to be a parent or you don't want to be a parent. And if you don't want to be a parent, you need to sign over your parental rights. And you
I
need to
agree.
duck out completely if you don't want to be a parent. Because if they don't want to be a parent, they're not going to do it, and they're not going to do anything but make you and that child. This is one of those situations where I feel like you need to think about your child. If this person is not being a parent, if they're doing what they want whenever they want to, see, you can't do that because you have custody of your kid. You know what I mean? So if this person doesn't want to be a parent, they're making the child miserable. They're not showing up when they say they're
True.
gonna. They're not doing, they're not buying what they say they're gonna, they're making promises to these kids and are not keeping their promises. And that's an issue because it's hurting that child's feelings.
True.
And don't you don't want, you will ruin a child that way. So either you're in or you're out.
You definitely touched on some very, very important parts, definitely, and I want to mention the fact that you said it's best to try to know the person, and then you furthered and said that sometimes things change, and that is normally the case because the person that you meet in the beginning is not the same throughout the relationship, and I think sometimes because it's more so females want who want to file who are trying to get child support when they look at the situation and they see that this person is not working on, he has intentions of moving on, then I think sometimes that's when the bitterness comes in and they have a tendency to ask for a great deal or just be a little unbearable at times. So I think that in the end, you should definitely. It is not about you anymore. It's about the child, and I think that you should take that in consideration. And that happens, but in a perfect world, that's not going to be the situation because everybody have different attitudes and have different perspectives about things. So it's not going to be that situation. You just have to be, have to find a medium point and be a grown up about the situation. I think.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I love it because you and your child's mother were able to work something out, and you guys are doing. How does your son?
Going on 6.
See, that's a blessing that you guys are able to do that and get along, and everything works out for your son, and he'll grow up and be a happier person because of it. Because he didn't
Definitely.
have to a whole bunch of. He didn't have to watch YouTube go through a whole bunch of mess because then if your children, you think that they don't understand, but they hear and they see everything. You could be talking about something and they can have TV on and they could be playing with a toy, and when you're done talking, they can repeat that whole conversation.
Okay, that's true. That is so true.
So yeah, I think that that's a blessing, and I appreciate you talking to me about this. I'm
No
going to
problem.
go to my next guest. But thank you so much, Anthony. I appreciate you always. Until the next time we do something together, you, my boy.
Thanks a lot.
So, Dion, we are having a discussion about custody and child support, the child support system, and how fair it is or unfair it is. And I want to know your opinion and your experience with those things.
Yep.
So, first, and you let me know if I get too personal with my questions. How many kids do you have?
I have two kids. I have a son and a daughter. My daughter's 17, my son's 15.
He's 17.
Mhm.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So the little girl last time I saw her. So I was like, wow. Um, do you get along with their mom?
Yes, I get along with everybody. It didn't start out that way. Of course, anytime you have a breakup, there's those, somebody's going to have hurt feelings. I mean, usually if it's a mutual breakup and you can get out of it without anyone having hurt feelings and get along up front, good for you. But, we've been together since we were teenagers. So we had some hurt feelings and we had a couple of rough years where it was really hard to do anything but communicate about our child after we broke up.
But you were able to your children.
Yes, we were able to just to keep it. We actually went to couples counseling after we broke up, so we could mediate how we dealt with things with Jaylee because we had promised each other a long time before we even had kids that we would never fight in front of our children because it's unhealthy and it teaches kids to kind of have an unhealthy outlook on how relationships work. And so we went to couples counseling, and when we split, we did have a lot of hard feelings. But the one thing they kept drilling into us is always make it about the children, keep the child's best interests in front of you versus your own self interest, and everything will work itself out from there. And that was the best advice I could have gotten.
So that couples is a very good idea, and I don't think anybody really thinks about doing stuff like that after a breakup when you have kids. And I was just discussing with Anthony about how a lot of people make the custody and the child support battle more about them than their kids. They'll mention that it's for their kids, but then it goes off into something else, and it always turns into a big fight and deal. And we were also talking about how everybody can be adults. You don't have to get courts involved and everything. Did you all have to go through court to like uh, come to a custody agreement or any child
So
support anything?
we didn't have to go through court to do it, but Jamie was ready to move on to Missouri, and I wanted to live in Nebraska. So it was just the easier way to do things. If they're just set in stone, then you don't have to worry about it on the back end or later on should somebody decide to change their mind or whatnot. So we did. Initially, we didn't go through the courts, but then when she wanted to move to Missouri, I insisted that we have something legally drawn up so that there was never any default on what we were doing as parents.
Now, what is unique about what you just said is that you are the one who wanted to do. Normally, I hear about the women, uh, with the women taking charge and like going, saying we have to go to court and everything. So, like that's really unique people today.
Well, again, we've been dating since we were teenagers. So when we found ourselves kind of going our separate ways, we had some personal fights, and all of this while Jaylee was with our baby with the babysitter, and or we'd be out, and we just kind of talk about it, and we had a few fights where we were like, I wouldn't even consider them fights. They were just times when we were talking, and we were both like, man, I just don't, we're growing and we're growing apart. I don't see you ever. Your career takes you in this direction. My career takes me in that direction. And so, after about a year and a half of that, I pulled the plug. Me and Jaylee were in St. Louis for a week, and we just decided it was time for both of us to move on. And then after that week, she came and got Jaylee. And then I went back home after she was home, moved out, and then I moved out. And we did it judiciously so that there wasn't any finger pointing in the end. But then again, that has a lot to do with how mature you're willing to be about a situation. It's not going to be that way for everyone.
No, it's not. So let me. I had earlier. Does the court say how much child support is paid, or is that something that you do with each other when you're
So in the courts, so you can set child support between the two of you and have a mediator, uh, basically have a mediator set that child support up for you. But it does eventually hit family court, and they do eventually make it an actual. They make it in not an, I don't want to call it an ordinance, but it's a child support order. So eventually they do. So when Jamie decided to move to Missouri, um, I was not willing to move back to Missouri. I was very happy with my career here. And so when we went to court, they took both of our incomes, put them together, and averaged out, what child support would be based on the lifestyle that we lived. So I'm not going to disclose how much I have to pay. Let's just say it's not a little, but it's my kid, and I feel like as a parent, um, especially as a dad, and if your kid doesn't live with you, um, you really do have to believe that money is going to good intentions, and you can't always believe that, oh well, she's just gonna trick it off on this or do that with it. Like, you got to believe, like, people still have bills to pay and food to buy, and none of that's cheap, and clothes to put on kids' backs, none of that stuff's cheap, and I
None
feel
of
like,
look, I'm by myself. Kids are expensive.
yes they are, and the older they get.
The more the more. So do you take care of her outside of child support though?
Yeah, yeah, we do a lot of things together. Like, we like kind of we chipped together and bought her a car. Um, like, just like, you got to think all the little things like paying for sports, going on trips, all of that stuff costs money too. And so all of that stuff I have a separate account for. And then there's college next year. Um,
Right.
Lord of mercy. Uh, so we also have an account for paying for college, and my daughter, being the pragmatist that she is, wants to go to junior college first so that she can see if that's something that she wants to do with herself. And
hmm
then if she can complete 2 years of junior college, then she wants to go on to university and put herself in a little bit of debt there.
That's nice.
She is a smart. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better kid in my life if I tried.
Well, thank you for sharing. Yeah, I think that's like the way you got that was really awesome. Like I said, I always hear like the bad side of it, and it's great to hear a, something a positive side of it. And you guys are really mature, right? You guys are working with your kid, and just thank you. I appreciate it, Dion.
Yeah. On a side note, I did want to say, and this is just from personal experience, because that's just one experience that I had. Then there's the experience with my son, which was completely different. Um, so I didn't necessarily know about him up front. I was in a band, and I was like, after me and Jamie split up, I decided, well, I'm gonna start doing music again and start traveling. So, like, not knowing who he was for this certain amount of time, and then coming back to Nebraska and finding out, well, you have a son, that blew my mind. So that became a thing that I had to deal with in court too, which was the complete opposite.
I was gonna say experience with that.
So Nebraska is a woman's rights state. So basically, if you have children in Nebraska, if they're residents of Nebraska, then the mother starts out with sole custody, and you have to basically, I hate to use the term fight for custody, but that's really all you can call it. Then you have to fight for visitation, fight for custody, and things like that. And so it was the exact opposite experience, and a little bit of a nightmare up front, and fiscally it was also a nightmare, because it was like, well, this kid's lived for this long and you didn't know about him. Now you know about him. Now you owe us this money for him being born, this money for in back child support, blah, blah, blah. And so that was a little bit of, it was like just all in my face up front. And I'm sitting there like, well, I didn't even know about him. Had I known about him, I would have taken care of this. And so that I had to go on a payment plan with, because there was no way I was going to. I hate to put dollar amounts out there, but there was no way I could afford to pay all of this at once. And the sad thing about that was, I got into a car wreck about a year and a half ago, and I injured my back and my neck and both of my arms severely. And I wound up in a hospital for a couple of weeks. And then beyond that, I wound up just kind of bedridden for a little bit there. And the child support system suspended my license. And I was like, what the hell? And so I get on the phone with him, and I'm like, so you realize I live far away from my job. Like, if I don't have a car, I can't get back to work. And then, I tell him, I'm like, I'm just recovering from this car wreck, and it's nothing nice. And, luckily, I got a hold of some people who were very understanding. And, I I gave them my paycheck stubs and I showed them the disparage in money that I was making, even though I was still on the same payroll. And so
Mm-hmm.
they gave me a pass, and I had to get my license reinstated, which cost more money. So it was like, on top of being injured and not having any income come in, like the state of Nebraska was like charging me this extra money, and then instead of taking their normal amount out of my paycheck, they started taking an extra, like, I'd say it was $100 per child. So I was being taxed an extra $200 per child so I could get caught up. Which to me, I felt like I was like, well, my kids are pretty adult, and I'm giving them receipts, and I'm like, I do all of this for them. Like, can't you guys give me a break here? So yeah,
Did it make
it's
any difference that you showing that you were doing?
it made a difference as far as them reinstating my license. So they went ahead and reinstated my license once I showed them my grievance with their decision. And then I showed back. I was like, I never had a problem paying child support, and I showed them all of my medical bills and whatnot. And I was like, if someone gets injured, what am I supposed to do? I barely had enough from insurance to pay my rent and pay my doctors. So, that's the unfortunate and ugly side
It
of the
is.
legal system.
Let me ask you though, could the mother, like, did she try to do it, kind of back you on it or anything, or?
Yes, that's the thing. And yeah, they did. They actually did back me on it. They were like, "Hey, what are you doing? If my ex doesn't have a car, he can't get to work, and then our kids are out even more money because then, unfortunately, like, the transit system out here is not great. So I would literally be stuck working somewhere close to home for maybe less money. So it the legal system has some really big bumps that it needs to work out. I mean, maybe instead of suspending someone's license, you can suspend their passport so they can't travel outside a country. I think that's fair, but impeding someone's ability to transport their children, even, you know,
Right.
it helps nobody. It literally helps no one. So
So, I'm glad you said that too. A lot of it sounds like it is the legal system that's the issue. I hear finger pointing, and it's usually one parent at the other parent about what's going on in the legal system, and it's not necessarily that parent's fault.
no, it's not. It's the machine. Yeah, like, you got to think, machines don't have feelings. They just see the numbers and they say, "Oh, well, this isn't happening. So this is the other." And they have a list of penalties. And so, at first it was the extra $200 out of my paycheck, and then when I was unable to come up with that, then it was like, "Oh, well, we're just going to suspend your license." And I still need money to live on too, and to put my daughter's college fund.
Yeah, you can open it. Okay, I'll open it later, baby. She does that sometimes. But so, like I said, thank you for sharing both of those sides. I wasn't expecting the second one.
Oh, no problem. There's two sides to every sword and two sides to every story. So, I mean, it's good to have a little bit of duality, and you
Yeah,
know,
and I'm not glad that you had both experiences, but I'm glad that you were able to share them. And I'm glad that it's working out. And I'm so glad the little girl is going. Look, I thought her a little girl. She's going to college. Like I said, last time I saw her, she was a little girl.
yep, yep. Now she's a grown woman, man. I'm telling you, she's a big girl. So, but hey, it's good to talk to you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Till next time, peace out from the moon.
All right. But good thing about it was at the end. But I hope that this video was able to give you guys some perspective, and hopefully everyone has a better experience. It was great to hear 3 different experiences. I had my own opinions about it, and I actually have changed a little bit about my thinking, since I know that a lot of the problem is within the system. So and hopefully this video will even help you find some understanding with the person that you're co-parenting with, if that's the case for you. Again, I want to thank Anthony and Dion for sharing their experience with us. Until next time, I said what I said, I meant what I said, and I love you.